There are lots of signs that the American economy is doing very well, better than most countries, I think. But the American people don't seem to be feeling it. Groceries are 25% higher, and people are blaming you and Joe Biden for that. Are they wrong?
So you are correct that under our leadership, the United States of America has recovered and is stronger than any other so-called developed nation in the world, in particular after the crisis that was the pandemic. And understand, we came into office facing a disaster in large part because of the mismanagement of the former president, Donald Trump, where the economy was in a slump. People were dying by the hundreds. It was a real crisis. But because of our approach and our work, we now have historic low unemployment in America among all groups of people. We now have an economy that is thriving by all macroeconomic measures. We have recovered in a way that we have created almost 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. We have created over 16 million new jobs as a whole. And to your point, prices are still too high. And I know that. And we need to deal with it, which is why part of my plan, you mentioned groceries. Part of my plan is what we must do to bring down the prices.
Harris says she'll press Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging for food and groceries, but details are yet to be defined.
Corporations and businesses that take advantage of a crisis and jack prices up, making the cost of groceries and other everyday essentials too expensive for the American people. I'm taking on the issue of housing. It's a big issue in our country. It's too expensive. There were generations before us that believed they could achieve the American dream, which included home ownership. Now I travel our country. I talk to young people every day. And they are so concerned they'll never be able to afford to buy a home or even start a family because of the cost of housing. So part of my plan is to put the resources into partnering with builders and developers to create incentives for them to build 3 million new homes by the end of my first term. And my plan includes giving first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance so they can just get their foot in the door.
You want to expand the child tax credit.
Yes, I do.
You want to give tax breaks to first-time home buyers.
Yes.
And people starting small businesses.
Correct.
But it is estimated by the Nonpartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget that your economic plan would add $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. How are you going to pay for that?
Okay, so the other economists that have reviewed my plan versus my opponent, because this is an election and there are two choices. Everyone from Goldman Sachs to Moody's to 16 Nobel laureates. So on the first point, comparing my economic plan to Donald Trump's economic plan, they have reviewed it and determined that my economic plan would strengthen America's economy, his would weaken it. 16 Nobel laureates, Moody's, others, have determined after reviewing what Donald Trump is proposing, that he would induce inflation, increase inflation, and bring about a recession by the middle of next year. My plan, Bill, if you don't mind, my plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
But pardon me, Madam Vice President, the question was, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, one of the things is I'm going to make sure that the richest among us who can afford it pay their fair share in taxes. Listen, again, my opponent, when he was president, issued a tax cut for people like himself, billionaires and the biggest corporations. My perspective is everybody needs to pay their fair share. It is not right that teachers and nurses and firefighters are paying a higher tax rate than billionaires and the biggest corporations. And I plan on making that fair.
But we're dealing with the real world here.
But the real world includes...
How are you going to get this through Congress?
when you talk quietly with a lot of folks in Congress, they know exactly what I'm talking about because their constituents know exactly what I'm talking about. Their constituents are those firefighters and teachers and nurses. Their constituents are middle-class, hardworking folk who know that it is not right that hardworking people are paying a higher tax rate than the richest people who can afford to pay their fair share. So that's how we deal with it. But understand also that this is, yes, it is about how we pay for what we're doing, but understand it doesn't end there. My plan is actually about strengthening America's economy, not just netting zero. My plan is about doing what we can do for small businesses and startups. Right now, the tax deduction bill for a startup, $5,000. In 2024, nary a person going to be able to start a small business with $5,000. So I'm going to extend it to $50,000. My plan is about what we need to do to, yes, expand the child tax credit, because for young families, for the first year of their child's life, $6,000 allows them to buy a crib, a car seat, and just be able to not just get by, but get ahead for that most critical stage of their child's development. We all benefit from that. We all benefit from that.
I understand, but that sounds great. It does. It all sounds good. But the reality is these tax cuts have been in place for years.
They're about to expire.
Yes. And Congress has shown no inclination to move in your direction.
I disagree with you. There are plenty of leaders in Congress who understand and know that the Trump tax cuts blew up our federal deficit and care about the deficit in a way that they know. We must address it by making sure that our tax policy reflects fairness and, again, understand none of us, and certainly I cannot afford to be myopic in terms of how I think about strengthening America's economy. And that has to include, where are we investing our resources in a way that we maximize the return on the investment? Let me tell you something. I am a devout public servant. You know that. I am also a capitalist. And I know the limitations of government.
Kamala Harris has been in government for decades. She was first elected San Francisco District Attorney in 2003, then California Attorney General. She went on to the U.S. Senate and now Vice President.